I actively made the decision to not scale. In order to stay in business and stay where you're currently at, you technically still have to grow at least probably 5 to 10% a year. There's so much data stuff you can do and you don't want to overdo it, but data was definitely a system that I wish I would have built sooner. That's going to double your lead flow, double your appointments booked, probably double your business. Welcome to the Value Creator Podcast, episode number 3. And again, just a quick recap of what this podcast even is. Because it's literally just me talking to the camera. We're basically going to pick a topic that you guys pretty much send in questions or questions that you guys have had. Today, the specific topic I'll be talking about is scaling. So not scaling like 100 million a year, but how do you scale a coaching, consulting, or agency business? Most likely, again, I don't know the questions yet, but probably past $100,000 a month. So when you talk about scale, most people are talking about 6-figure months, even 7-figure months. So that's what we're talking about today. So what's our first question? Yeah, bro. How do you know when it's time to scale? Well, scaling is a decision. Scaling is not something that just happens in a natural sense, because I'm a big believer, just like Hormozi and pretty much every top dog in business, in the theory of constraints, where you will grow up until you hit a point. And even Dan Martell talks about like his complexity ceiling. So I'll give a quick breakdown of what I mean by that. So you will grow up until the point where you have a constraint. So let's say that your current constraint in your business is that you don't have enough leads. Well, it's not going to be natural. Like, you're not just going to naturally have leads just fall into your lap. And so scaling is a decision that you're going to make in order to say, you know what, the current constraint, the only thing stopping me from going to 10K a month to 20K a month is we don't have enough leads, assuming that you have identified the correct problem. If we solve that constraint and we say, you know what, we're going to take you from 100 leads a week to 200 leads a week, that's going to double your lead flow, double your appointments booked, probably double your business. Now, once you double your business, from 10K a month to 20K a month, you now have the decision to make of, okay, do I want to scale again and solve the next bottleneck or constraint, which probably is going to be fulfillment, right? You have 5 or 10 new clients now. How are you going to fulfill at scale to all those clients? And so scaling is a decision that you're going to make in the season of life that you're in. When I was in the season of life of traveling with my wife through Bali, on a honeymoon and trying not to work, 8-10 hours a day, every single day, I actively made the decision to not scale, right? I decided I'm going to stay where I'm currently at, or maybe just grow a tiny bit and not have to build new systems and not have to scale, because scaling is not easy. Scaling takes a lot of time. If you're trying to go from somewhere you're currently at to somewhere you've never been before, and you don't know what the next level even looks like, there is a lot of work involved in that. Going from 10K a month to 100K a month is almost like running 2 different kinds of businesses. One is like being a highly paid consultant. One is where you're trying to hire a team and lead people. So again, it's just, in my opinion, knowing the right time to scale is like, what season of life in business are you in currently? And scaling doesn't always mean revenue. Scaling doesn't mean like going from 10K a month to 100K a month at all times. Scaling could be, I'm going to scale out my team. I'm going to scale out my fulfillment. I'm going to scale out my systems. It doesn't have to mean scaling in terms of revenue. And so you might be in a season of like this quarter, let me figure out how to hire a good team. Let me figure out how to get the right people in place. Let me figure out how to build the right systems so that come quarter 2, I can actually be able to scale past 200,000 a month, right? Because I have the systems in place, I have the people in place. Now it's just about upping lead flow or whatever it is. So like currently where we're at in business is we are trying to scale, but we're not trying to scale our revenue that crazy this exact month. This month we're taking to, or at least in January's the last day of January now, but we took the entire month to pretty much build out all the sales systems we needed to support a $300,000 a month consulting business. Whereas before, our sales systems were not great. They probably would have capped us around like 100 to 150. And so this January month was really like, let's build the systems. Let's still make some money, but let's take time and build systems so we can scale, right? So I would say that in January, we still scaled. We just didn't scale our revenue. We scaled our systems, our sales, procedures, processes, and systems. But anyways, that was a long-winded answer to say it's a choice that you have to make, and it doesn't always mean revenue. Well, I think it depends on the kind of business you run, but 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, if you stay where you're currently at in business, you will slowly die. And that's not because, that's not for some like weird reason that's like, like when I say that, most people are probably thinking like, oh, like he's just growth oriented. And so therefore the reason that if you're not growing, you're dying is because you're going to feel like crap if you're not growing. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the industry that you're in, if you're watching this video, is probably, I don't care if you work with real estate agents, I don't care if you work with tax advisors, I don't care if you work with online coaches, it doesn't matter. Every year, that industry is going to grow year over year, 5%, 10%, right? And so the GDP, like the total amount of people in that market, the total amount of money moved in that market are going to grow. And if you're staying where you're currently at, and not to mention inflation, if you're staying where you're currently at right now and the industry is growing, you are dying. And so in order to stay in business and stay where you're currently at, you technically still have to grow at least probably 5 to 10% a year, especially when you're in the marketing world where most of us or most of the people listening are. That world grows incredibly fast and it adapts and changes constantly. And if you're not staying, I'm not saying that you can't, let's say, the coach that I had previously was a guy named Dan Bolton, and his business philosophy, which I love for him, is more of like what kind of that question is like, hey, do you have to constantly just scale? And Dan definitely has the goal of making more money, right? Don't get me wrong. Like he's currently doing probably like 1.5 million a year, maybe close to 2. And he definitely has the goal of scaling to 3 million a year. But his goal, he's kind of one of those people that would maybe be in the category of sort of staying where they're at and just growing with the market, because he has a family, he lives in Bali, he doesn't have that much monthly expenses, and he's kind of like pretty free with his money. And so it's like, it's more of a lifestyle business. It's not a business. It's like highly paid consultant lifestyle rather than like, I'm going to build a team and run a business. And so that's one option that you could definitely pursue if you don't want to like go build this massive crazy business. You don't have to go build a $100 million a year business. But if you're not growing, you literally are slowly dying. So, well, I think you can definitely overbuild systems in a season where you don't need all these systems to scale. So like you always have to figure out what is the current problem or constraint. There's one thing stopping me from getting to the next level. Let me just solve that. So you don't want to solve for problems that you don't have yet. In a recent presentation I did, I talked about the fact that you get the privilege to solve the next problem, and you don't get the privilege to solve a $200,000 a month problem if you're only at $100,000 a month, right? A $200,000 a month problem might be that you need to build out like this crazy onboarding automated system with like 20,000 zaps. That way everything just automates, and they get a Slack channel, they get onboarded, they get all this stuff. You don't need that at $100,000 a month. At $100,000 a month, you're maybe signing up like one client every 2 days, and you definitely need an onboarding system, but you don't need a crazy one. Maybe that's a bad example, but you get the point. You don't want to solve problems that you literally don't even have yet. But in terms of systems that maybe I wish I would have built, I think there's a couple things. I think number one, I wish I would have built out a client roadmap sooner. So I always separate my business into 3 parts: sales, marketing, client success. And if you're looking at, I can probably think of a system within each category that I wish I would have built. So in client success, I wish I would have built a roadmap sooner. Like we had a group coaching offer, a group kind of consulting offer. It was 16 weeks, and people would come in and they would have all this information, but there wasn't a clear roadmap on how to use all that information. So I wish I would have built out like a clear roadmap on like the step-by-step to use that information. We have that now, but I wish I would have had that in the beginning as we started scaling. In the marketing world, I wish I would have built out a sales pipeline sooner, or like a marketing pipeline, whatever you want to call it, where you can see, how many leads are coming every day. You have proper data reporting. That's honestly the biggest thing for marketing is data. Like most people don't have accurate data. You think your cost per lead and cost per call and how many calls you're getting, but that's not even scratching the surface on data. Like you need to know like where all of those leads are coming from directly. Are they coming from YouTube? Are they coming from Instagram? What exact ad creative are they coming from? There's so much data stuff you can do, and you don't want to overdo it. But data was definitely a system that I wish I would have built sooner for marketing. And then for sales, I didn't have, until I recently bought into a sales coaching program, and it made me feel like an absolute infant in the sales game, because I realized all of the things that I was like, you know what, we have decent sales systems, but why don't I buy this program to kind of see like, okay, this guy's an expert at sales. Maybe there's just a couple things that I'm missing. And there was like a million things that we are now trying to implement all at once to try and catch up with our sales process and systems. And so like of client success and of marketing, those two things were, building systems was not easy, but sales is probably the number one place I wish I would have built systems for data, for sales pipelines, for follow-up, for how to hire and onboard and recruit new setters and closers. Sales is a beast. At least that's what I'm realizing. And maybe some of the people watching are great at sales, but that's probably my weakness. Yeah, so there's always a set amount of roles within a coaching, consulting, or agency business. And most likely, you're doing multiple of them if you're the founder or the owner of the business, right? So I've separated it. I have a list. I don't know off the top of my head, but there's a copywriter. There's someone to do tech and data. There is a sales coordinator. There's a closer. There's a setter. There's a client success manager. There's a coach. There's all these different roles. And most likely, if you're watching this podcast, you're either doing all of them or at least many of them. And I'm still in many of those roles. But that's perfectly fine for now. But as you scale, you'll slowly start delegating some of those roles. The first key hires that you want to make, number one, you need someone to edit your content. That's probably the first role you're ever going to hire. It's not worth it for you to go in and edit all your content, because it's a skill that you have to learn. And even when you learn the skill, it still takes a lot of time. So if you're taking an hour every single day to edit content, you should be out there setting appointments and closing appointments instead. So first hire someone to do content, whether it's ad creatives, content, like you need content. There's no one can even question that anymore. So you need a content editor. Second hire I would make is a virtual assistant. This could be part-time, someone to come in and just like take care of menial tasks that you have throughout the day. There's more than you think you can delegate to a VA. There's a lot more that you can delegate than you think. Whenever I write out my to-do list for the day, today I have like, I try and keep 3 or 4 things, but today I have like 13. So I'm probably not going to get it all done, and I'll probably feel like crap at the end of the day because I didn't. But whenever I have a to-do list like that, I can even like pull up my to-do list and see there's probably things on here, and even on your to-do list if you're listening, that you 100% can delegate at least a portion of it. So I'll give you an example. I currently, if you're listening, you won't see this, but I have my to-do list in front of my iPad. The first thing is figure out a follow-up pipeline sequence, right? So whenever a lead comes in, they don't close in the sales call. How do we do long-term follow-up with all those people? That way that they still get taken care of and they still get on a call with us and potentially close weeks or months down the line. Well, I could either A, go watch all the modules on how to implement that and figure it out myself, or B, I could go send my virtual assistant to go watch the module, take notes on it, bring me back the best notes, and tell me which parts of that module to watch and which parts not to watch, and at least give me a summary of everything. That way, I don't have to go do it all myself. So that's just an example of one way you can use a virtual assistant. That's the first thing on my to-do list. Now, the second thing on my to-do list is create a pre-call training, a 20-minute pre-call training for people to watch before our sales call. Okay, one way that I would potentially delegate that is, say, Pamela, my virtual assistant, go watch 5 other pre-call trainings, go funnel hack 5 people, watch their pre-call trainings, and bring back to me a summary. You can even transcribe it, put it in ChatGPT, have ChatGPT create an outline of a pre-call training. I take that pre-call training, and now I make my own, and it's a lot easier. I'm not having to go research and just make mine out of nothing. So second hire, virtual assistant. Again, you can delegate way more things than you think, and that's only going to cost you less than $1,000 a month to have a virtual assistant come in and do that for you. And then the third hire I would make is probably an appointment setter. So again, at this point, you're still closing, you're still coaching, you're still creating content, doing all the marketing. But I would definitely bring in an appointment setter once you're past $30,000 to $50,000 a month, because a setter won't make enough money to stay if you're not at least that far in terms of revenue. And that setter's going to go in your DMs. They're going to go and contact all your leads, email, SMS, and phone. and they're going to book in the appointments for you. That way they can book in more appointments because they're probably going to be just full-time in that role. And they'll leave more time for you to do more important things in the business. So the most important thing when delegating though is that if you are going to buy back your time with hiring people and delegate things, that you actually need to use that time wisely. And you actually need to use that time to do higher dollar per hour tasks that are going to move the business forward rather than going and chilling in the beach in the Bahamas or continuing to do other things that are low dollar per hour. Well, team leadership isn't important until you're past 100,000 a month because you don't have a team, right? So it hasn't become important for me until the last last 3 to 4 weeks where we brought on like 2 or 3 new people. And I'm now realizing how stupid I thought team leadership and leadership in general was, and like leadership coaches out there, and like leadership books. And I'm like, dude, this is all just bullshit. Like this is all, no one actually needs this. This is all woo-woo stuff. Like I don't want to read the book Traction and learn how to build an internal operating system. But now I'm like, man, I wish I would have overlearned all this stuff, because once you have an offer that works and you learn client and you crack client acquisition, you can pay to get a client. It has nothing to do with, obviously you can be better at marketing and sales, but like it has nothing to do with let's write better copy, let's write a better headline, let's make better offers. And it has everything to do with getting the right people in place and then leading them to do things for you in your business the right way. And so leading people is like one of the hardest skills to learn. But again, like you only get the privilege of learning that skill once you need to. There was no reason for me to go read a bunch of leadership books, 3-4 months ago when I didn't have a team to lead. And I think the best way to learn sales is to take sales calls. And the best way to learn team leadership is to lead, probably mess up a lot, take the mistakes, and once you realize that, oh, wow, I'm a baby in this game, go learn from somebody that's a better leader, learn exactly how to do it, get coached up. So it's just like anything else. But I do think that past 100,000 a month, or even maybe past 200,000 a month, it's really just about like people. Like how can you get the right people in place to do the right things at the right times? But it is stressful, like learning how to lead a team, have more overhead, all that stuff. Yeah, so the current goal is, in terms of just revenue, like no other, like other goals aside, the revenue goal is $400K a month. So $5 million a year pace. That's the current, milestone. So that's about 100,000 of new cash per week. And so that's the current, goal. Now, in order to do 100,000 of new cash a week, you can work backwards pretty easily if you know your price points to figure out, okay, how many calls we need to book, how many leads do we need based on that, and all that stuff. So you can figure all of that out. The hard part is just like building the systems to handle volume, like just pure volume. Like how can you handle twice as many clients coming through the door, really 3 times as many clients coming through the door? How can you handle 3 times as many calls being booked? You need systems to do all of that. You don't even really know that you need systems. Right now you're making, maybe you're just taking sales calls yourself and you just have a couple calls in the calendar and you do follow up when you think about it. You don't have like a clear sales pipeline with like leads in every single part and how much that pipeline's worth. You don't have a clear follow-up system. You don't have automations going out to people for follow-up. You don't have multiple setters. You don't have a sales lead. So there's a lot of stuff that we're currently implementing, mostly in sales and then client success. Marketing's pretty cut and dry. It's like, let's just keep creating new ad creatives, get the click-through rate down, get the cost per lead down, and make sure the lead quality is solid. But like marketing's pretty cut and dry, at least for me. That's what I'm really good at. Sales and systems is something I'm not great at. That's what I'm mostly having to learn, trying to scale to $400K a month. And then client success, building systems for client success. Again, like I even had a sales call yesterday. I've been taking a couple sales calls to try and gauge the lead quality. And one of the objections was just like, how, I'm not going to get to spend that much time with you personally, Grayson. And my response to that was, dude, I completely understand that. And that's 100% true. You're not going to get to spend hours and hours of time with me. But would you rather get to work with me and just get to say, oh yeah, I work one-on-one with Grayson? Or would you rather have a system built out to when you come in, you don't even need to rely on me to be there. and there's a system that gets you a result rather than me trying to get you the result, right? And so if you can get the same result with a system as you can with the coach, that's where you want to be in terms of client success. And so that's where we're close to there, is like, whether they work with me or whether they just go through our program itself and the system that's built there, the goal is that they get the same result both ways. And so building out systems for that and then building out systems for sales, those are the two hardest things to scale into a $400K a month, $5 million a year pace. Marketing is, I'm sure there'll be hard parts there, but like that's what I'm really good at. So I'm basically like our CMO and our sales manager and our client success director all in one. So we'll call it a pod there. Thanks for listening or watching, depending on whichever one you're doing. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Value Creator, or follow me personally at Grayson Lupus. We post all the podcast clips and stuff to the YouTube channel at Value Creator on Instagram. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace out, Value Creators.